If that machine wakes up for you, Commander, you had better pray it does not believe you deserve it. The old warning came from a dying archivist 3 weeks before the Aurelian Dominion dragged the ancient weapon out of the dark side of Vera. 9. And Commander Miranda Vale had laughed when she heard it. She was not laughing now. The weapon hung outside the observation glass like a black city turned on its side, 30 miles long, covered in ribs of dead metal and faint blue symbols that pulsed under the starlight, like something breathing in its sleep. Around it floated the pride of the Dominion fleet, cruisers, carriers, command ships, enough firepower to make smaller worlds sign treaties without reading them. Inside the command deck, every officer stood perfectly still while Miranda placed her silver hand against the control spine for the 7th time that morning. Her violet skin shimmered with thin lines of blue light, the Aurelian sign of anger held tightly under discipline. "Recognize command authority," she said. Her voice was calm, cold, practiced. "Supreme Fleet Commander Miranda Vale. Aurelian Dominion. Authorization black." The control spine stayed dark. Somewhere behind her, one of the younger officers forgot to breathe. Miranda heard it. She heard everything. "Again," she ordered. A priest general stepped forward, robes clicking with ceremonial armor. He gave the old war oath in a language older than most planets on the star charts. Nothing happened. An admiral cut his palm and pressed it to the glassy surface, offering royal bloodline verification. Nothing happened. 3 military AIs poured 1 billion command sequences into the relic in less than a minute. The weapon ignored them like rain on stone. By noon, the commanders had stopped looking proud. By 1, they had stopped making eye contact. "It is broken," Captain Soren said from the tactical pit, too eager, too loud. "No," Miranda said. "It is refusing us." The room tightened around those words. Nobody wanted a weapon that could refuse. Nobody wanted to admit the thing they had claimed as a trophy might have been judging them the entire time. Then the rear doors opened with a soft hydraulic sigh, and a human walked in late. He was not impressive, not by Aurelian standards. Caleb Warren was 6 feet tall in worn Terran work boots, a gray utility jacket, and a faded blue shirt that looked like it had survived more airports than battles. He had pale skin, tired eyes, 3 days of stubble, and a paper coffee cup in one hand with a cracked plastic lid. A Terran technician followed behind him carrying 2 tool cases and looking deeply uncomfortable. Caleb stopped when he saw every alien on the deck staring. "Sorry," he said. "Your lift system tried to reroute me through a coolant bay." No one answered. Miranda turned slowly. "Mr. Warren, you were invited as an observer, not as a participant." Caleb glanced past her at the weapon, and the dry humor faded from his face. For a second, he looked less like a contractor and more like a man hearing a smoke alarm in a house full of sleeping children. He set his coffee down on the nearest console. "That thing is not asleep," he said quietly. "It is waiting." The lights went out. Every ship in the Dominion fleet lost power for 3 full seconds. No alarms. No explosion. Just a deep, impossible silence, as if the star system itself had taken a breath and held it. Then the ancient weapon opened a single line of blue-white fire along its spine, not aiming, not charging, simply waking. The observation glass filled with symbols that no Aurelian translation engine had ever understood. This time, the human words appeared beneath them in plain English. Terran's signal confirmed. 6 hours earlier, Caleb Warren had been standing in a transfer lock with a paper visitor badge that kept refusing to scan. The Aurelian security officer on the other side of the glass stared at him as if he had brought a lawn mower to a royal wedding. Caleb held the badge up again, turned it around, and gave the camera a tired little smile. "I promise you, I am not trying to invade your station with a coffee and a torque meter." The officer did not smile back. "Terran Technical Observer Caleb Warren," the translator said in a flat voice. "Access level temporary. Movement restricted. No contact with primary relic systems." "That is fine," Caleb said. "I prefer not touching ancient alien death machines before breakfast." The door finally opened, and the smell hit him first: cold metal, recycled air, and the sharp electric bite of too many reactors working too close together. The excavation platform had been built in orbit over Vera, 9 in less than 12 days, which told Caleb everything he needed to know. Nobody built that fast unless they were scared someone else would get there first. A young Aurelian aide led him through a corridor lined with Dominion banners and armed honor guards. Every alien they passed looked down at him, not with hatred exactly, but with that clean, polished kind of contempt Caleb had seen from defense executives, university donors, and men in expensive suits who called maintenance workers by the wrong name. He did not take it personally. Taking it personally wasted energy. He had learned that on Europa, back when a mining director ignored a pressure warning because the quarterly numbers looked bad. 3 people did not come home from that shift, and Caleb had spent the next 9 years reading every warning label twice. At the end of the corridor, Commander Miranda Vale waited beside a panoramic window. Beyond it, the ancient weapon hung in the black, so large it made the nearby cruisers look like loose screws in a toolbox. Miranda did not offer her hand. "Mr. Warren," she said, "your government insisted on sending an observer." "My government likes paperwork," Caleb said. "I just got picked because I know old systems and I was already within 2 jumps." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "This facility is under Dominion command. You will observe, submit notes, and refrain from interfering." Caleb nodded. "Works for me." He meant it. He had no interest in arguing with a fleet commander on her own deck. He wanted to inspect the safety perimeter, write a report, sleep for 6 hours, and maybe call his sister before she sent another message asking if space was still trying to kill him. His phone had no signal, of course. The last unsent text sat on the screen as he stepped into the lift. "I will be back by Sunday." He looked at it, thumb hovering for a moment, then deleted it. Promising a return date felt like tempting the universe. The lift opened onto an archive bay filled with holographic scans of the relic surface. Caleb walked past them slowly, his face going still. In the corner of one image, half buried beneath burn marks older than human civilization, was a symbol shaped almost like a hand. Not Aurelian, not insectoid, not 6-fingered, not clawed, not ceremonial. 5 fingers. Human enough to make the coffee turn cold in his stomach. Caleb did not say anything about the handprint right away. That was another lesson Europa had carved into him. Never announce bad news until you know what kind of bad it is. He stood in the archive bay with his hands in his jacket pockets while Aurelian officers moved around him, tall and bright and certain, all of them pretending they were not nervous. The first activation ceremony began at 1400 ship time in the main command chamber, and the Dominion treated it less like a test and more like a coronation. Every senior commander in the fleet had been invited. They stood in layered uniforms, polished armor, and ceremonial sashes, each one waiting for the relic to recognize the greatness of their rank. Caleb watched from behind a waist-high security rail with a temporary badge on his chest and a cooling cup of coffee in his hand. A young Aurelian technician beside him glanced at the paper notebook tucked under his arm. "You record data by hand?" she asked. "Sometimes," Caleb said. "Paper has never needed a software update." She blinked, unsure if that was a joke. At the center of the chamber, Admiral Thalen stepped forward first. His voice carried through the deck speakers as he delivered a command sequence approved by 3 military academies and a Royal Language Council. The relic stayed dark. Next came a prince from the Dominion Inner Worlds, silver-robed, and smiling like history had personally saved him a chair. He placed both hands on the control spine and announced his bloodline back 12 generations. Nothing happened. Then the priest generals tried. Then the war scholars. Then the artificial command minds. Each one dumping oceans of logic into the ancient interface, so quickly the air smelled faintly of overheated circuits. Nothing. The weapon did not reject them with sparks or alarms. That would have been easier. It simply ignored them, and somehow that felt worse. Commander Miranda Vale stood near the observation glass, her expression smooth, but Caleb noticed the blue lines under her violet skin growing brighter by the minute. Anger for Aurelians was not loud. It glowed. "The translation matrix is incomplete," Captain Soren said. "The relic does not understand modern authority." Caleb looked at the symbols crawling across one dead panel. "I do not think authority is what it is looking for." Soren turned his narrow eyes on him. "You have been here less than an hour." "That is true." Caleb took a slow sip of coffee, regretted it immediately, and set the cup down. But every person who walked up there did the exact same thing. Miranda finally looked at him. "Explain." Caleb pointed at the control spine without crossing the rail. They all told it who they were. Rank, bloodline, command status, fleet authority. Nobody asked what it was built to refuse. The chamber got quiet enough that Caleb could hear the ventilation system ticking in the ceiling. Soren gave a soft, humorless laugh. A weapon refuses enemies. Caleb shook his head. No, a smart weapon refuses bad orders. The translation system hesitated on the phrase, then repeated it in Aurelian. Several officers shifted their weight. Miranda did not. She stepped closer to the central display as a new line of ancient text appeared across the glass, brighter than before, patient and cold. The shipboard artificial intelligence tried to translate it, failed, tried again, and then produced a single sentence in English. Will you strike first? The words sat on the glass like a dare, and for once nobody in the command chamber had a speech ready. Will you strike first? Caleb stared at the sentence until the room around him softened into background noise. He had seen questions like that before, not from alien relics, but from safety boards, court hearings, and quiet hospital corridors where people tried to turn a bad decision into an accident. Miranda Vale broke the silence first. That is a strategic prompt. Caleb shook his head. No, Commander. That is a character test. Captain Soren gave a sharp laugh. A machine does not test character. Caleb looked at him. Then you have never worked with a machine built by people who were afraid of themselves. Miranda did not like that answer, but she did not dismiss it. She ordered the rail lowered and allowed Caleb onto the central platform under armed supervision. He walked slowly, not because he wanted drama, but because old systems had moods. Not feelings, not souls, moods. Pressure changes, resonance shifts, static buildup, tiny warnings that proud people missed because they were too busy issuing commands. Do not touch the core, Miranda said. I was planning on not dying today, Caleb replied. He took a small analog meter from his tool bag, the kind with a needle instead of a glowing display. An Aurelian technician made a quiet clicking sound that the translator politely ignored. Caleb heard it anyway. Go ahead, he said without looking up. Make fun of the museum piece. It still works when your network gets confused. The technician went silent. Caleb moved the meter along the base of the control spine. The needle jumped, dropped, then pulsed in a rhythm too steady to be random. He pulled out his paper notebook and wrote 3 numbers. Then 3 more. Miranda stepped closer. You are measuring electrical leakage? Not leakage. Caleb tapped the meter with 1 finger. Heartbeat pattern. The weapon is alive. No, but it is listening like something alive. That was the part that bothered him. It was not waking because someone had found the right password. It was listening to voice stress, pulse rate, hesitation, intent. Maybe not in a mystical way. Maybe through heat, microtremors, breath chemistry. All the ugly little truths bodies give away when mouths lie. Caleb crouched near the lower panel and found the hand-shaped marking again. 5 fingers, burned into the dark metal beneath layers of old scoring. Around it were other handprints, 6-fingered, clawed, 3-pronged, all crossed out with deep lines. Not erased. Rejected. He felt his stomach tighten. Commander, he said quietly, this was not built to find the strongest species. Miranda's blue stress lines brightened. Then what was it built to find? Caleb looked back at the sentence on the glass. Will you strike first? He thought of Europa. He thought of alarms dismissed as inconvenient. He thought of men who called preventable losses acceptable. Then he stood, tired and suddenly colder than before. Someone who knows the difference between being able to fire and having the right to fire. The room held its breath. Outside the glass, the ancient weapon answered with a low pulse of light, and every Dominion targeting display shut itself off. For 3 seconds after the targeting displays went dark, nobody moved. The Dominion officers looked at the dead screens as if the relic had insulted them in public. To Caleb, it felt more like a warning light on an old pickup truck, the kind you ignored only if you enjoyed walking home. Miranda Vale stood with her hands behind her back, her face perfectly controlled, but the blue lines under her violet skin were bright enough now to reflect off the glass. Restore tactical projection, she ordered. Commander, Caleb said, keeping his voice low. I would be careful with that. Captain Soren snapped his head toward him. You do not command this deck, Terran. Caleb looked at him, then at Miranda. No, I do not. That is why I am asking instead of ordering. It was the wrong room for humility. The Aurelians heard weakness in anything that was not shaped like command. Miranda stepped onto the central platform and gestured to the main display. Run strategic compliance models. Scenario 1. Border pacification. Scenario 2. Preemptive deterrence against the Marrow Coalition. Scenario 3. Demonstration strike on an uninhabited moon within visual range of contested space. The displays came back, but not as weapons. They lit up with maps. Dozens of systems, trade lanes, colony zones, refugee routes, all reduced to clean colors and curved lines. Caleb stared at the projection and felt something inside him go very still. He knew that kind of map. People loved maps because maps did not show faces. A red circle looked tidy. A restricted zone looked reasonable. A displacement estimate looked like math instead of families packing bags in the middle of the night. That is not a test, he said. Miranda did not turn. It is a controlled demonstration. No, Commander. That is a threat with a nicer label. Soren stepped closer, voice sharp. You are here because your species was invited to witness history, not lecture it. Caleb rubbed both hands over his face. He suddenly missed bad coffee, rainy Maine mornings, and the sound of his sister complaining about grocery prices over the phone. Normal problems. Human-sized problems. Then he looked back at the ancient weapon floating beyond the glass, and normal felt very far away. Listen to me, Caleb said. Whatever built that thing was scared of exactly this conversation. Not enemies. Not pirates. Not border disputes. This. A room full of important people convincing themselves the first shot is responsible. Miranda finally faced him. Peace is maintained by fear. Caleb gave a tired, humorless smile. That is what everybody says right before they start calling fear stability. The chamber chilled around him. Several guards shifted their weapons downward, not aiming yet, just reminding him where he stood. Miranda's voice dropped. You mistake restraint for uncertainty. No, Caleb said. I mistake a loaded gun for a loaded gun. For a moment, something crossed Miranda's face that looked almost like doubt. Then Soren ruined it. Forced the interface. Route command authority through the fleet core. The technicians hesitated. Miranda did not stop them. Caleb felt his pulse kick hard. Commander, do not do that. The first technician connected the fleet core to the relic channel. The ancient symbols outside the glass stopped moving. Every light in the room turned white. Not bright. White. Clean as a hospital hallway. Then the floor gave one soft tremor, and across the tactical wall, one by one, every Dominion ship changed status from active command to external lock. Engines frozen. Weapons sealed. Navigation denied. Life support preserved. The relic had not attacked them. It had simply taken the keys away. The command deck did not erupt into chaos. That would have been easier for Caleb to handle. Chaos had a rhythm. People shouted, alarms screamed, somebody spilled coffee, somebody tripped over a cable, and you got to work. This was worse. This was silence with uniforms on. Every Aurelian officer stared at the tactical wall as their fleet, the pride of the Dominion, sat perfectly alive and perfectly useless in the dark around Vera 9. Engines frozen. Weapons sealed. Navigation denied. Life support preserved. Caleb read the status line twice, then let out a slow breath through his nose. Well, he said quietly, that answers one question. Captain Soren turned on him so fast his command cloak snapped against the floor. You did this. Caleb looked at the dead targeting displays, then back at him. I told you not to plug your whole fleet into the haunted toaster. Enough. Miranda Vale's voice cut through the room. She did not raise it, but every officer straightened as if a wire had been pulled tight through their spines. Her eyes stayed on Caleb. Secure the Terran. The guards moved in. Caleb did not run. He did not reach for his tools. He did not even take a step back. He just raised both hands, palms open, fingers spread, the universal language of please do not make this worse. In his head, the old emergency checklist started on its own. Stay visible. Speak slowly. No sudden moves. Watch the nervous ones, not the angry ones. He could feel his heart beating too hard under his jacket, and for a second he hated himself for it, as if fear was some kind of professional failure. Then he remembered something his sister had told him after Europa, when he had stopped sleeping through the night. Caleb, being scared means your body still wants you alive. So he let himself be scared and stayed still anyway. One guard reached for his arm. Before the alien hand touched him, the floor lit up beneath Caleb's boots. A circle of blue-white symbols spread outward, smooth as water, stopping every Aurelian 2 feet away from him. The guards froze. Miranda's face changed for the first time. Not much. Just enough. Nobody move, Caleb said. That includes me, by the way. The relic outside the glass pulsed once. The light climbed the observation window and narrowed into a thin beam that passed over Caleb from head to toe. It was warm, not painful, more like standing too close to a bathroom heater on a winter morning. The scan moved across his face, his hands, the small scar under his jaw from a childhood bike crash, the stress sweat at his collar, the tremor he was trying very hard to hide. Then it played his own voice through every speaker on the deck. That is a threat with a nicer label. The words sounded smaller coming back at him. Human. Tired. Irritated. Honest. Another line appeared on the glass in English first, before the Aurelian translation system could touch it. Moral hesitation detected. First strike rejection detected. Terran custodian candidate identified. Soren looked as if the universe had personally embarrassed him. Candidate for what? Caleb whispered. The relic answered by opening the main interface. Not to Miranda, not to the fleet core, not to the officers who had spent their lives chasing command. It opened toward Caleb alone. The interface did not look like a control panel. That was the first thing Caleb noticed, and it bothered him more than if it had shown a big red firing command. The light opened in the air in front of him like a doorway made of thin blue glass, and beyond it was not a weapons menu, not a target map, not a clean military diagram. It was a hallway, a real one, or close enough to make his knees feel unsteady. Miranda stepped beside him, slower than before, her authority still there, but thinner now, like armor after a long day. What is it showing you? She asked. Caleb swallowed. An invitation, I think. Captain Soren started to speak, but the relic dimmed the sound around him until his voice became a distant murmur. Miranda heard it too. Her jaw tightened. It is choosing who gets to listen. Caleb almost laughed, but there was nothing funny in it. Yeah, I hate that. The blue doorway widened, and the floor under Caleb's boots marked a path toward the inner access bridge, the sealed corridor that ran from the orbital platform into the relic itself. Nobody had been able to open it in 3 weeks. Now it unlocked with a soft, tired sound, like an old house settling at night. Caleb looked at Miranda. I am not going in there alone. You believe I can enter? I believe if this thing wanted you gone, we would already know. That answer did not comfort either of them, but it was enough. They crossed the bridge together, 200 feet of transparent shielding with the dead world of Vera, 9 turning below them, and the Dominion fleet hanging powerless above. Inside, the relic was warmer than Caleb expected. Not hot, not alive, just warm in the way a church feels warm after people have been sitting in it all morning. The walls rose high above them in dark curved ribs, covered with images made of light. Caleb had expected trophies, victories, proud builders standing over conquered stars. Instead, he saw warnings. Cities sealed under glass domes. Councils arguing over glowing maps. Generals placing hands on the same spine Miranda had tried to command. Then the images shifted to empty halls, abandoned ships, and children's toys floating in silent rooms. Caleb looked away first. He was not proud of that, but he did. Miranda did not. Her face had gone still in a different way now. Not command still, but grief still. They used it, she said. They used it on themselves. Caleb nodded slowly. Looks like they built a lock after they learned what the key could do. At the center of the chamber stood a low stone-like pedestal marked with the same 5-fingered symbol. Caleb stepped closer and heard, not with his ears exactly, a phrase forming in plain English. Power is not proof of custody. That is a pretty good sentence, he whispered. Miranda looked at him. Your people wrote that? No. Caleb ran a hand over his face. But I wish we had. For a moment, he thought of his father in Maine, fixing engines behind their garage, telling him, a tool does not care what you meant, Cal. It only cares what your hands do. Back then, Caleb had thought it was just another dad line, the kind men said while holding a wrench and avoiding feelings. Now, standing inside a machine that could humble fleets, it felt like scripture. Miranda's voice came quieter than before. The Dominion did not come here only to study it. Caleb did not turn around. I figured. The Marrow Coalition found fragments of the same archive 6 months ago. If they reached this system first, they would have claimed it. My orders were to secure the relic before they could. Secure, Caleb said. Nice word. Miranda accepted the hit without flinching. Yes, a nice word. The chamber lights shifted, and far outside, every dormant display in the Dominion fleet showed a new warning. Unregistered hostile arrival detected. Caleb closed his eyes for half a second. Let me guess, he said. Miranda looked toward the stars beyond the relic wall. The coalition is here. The Marrow coalition arrived like a tear opening in the dark. 1 second there was only Vera, 9, the disabled Dominion fleet, and the ancient weapon glowing with patient blue light. The next second, 37 coalition warships slid out of jump space in a crescent formation, their hulls long and pale, their engine wakes bending the stars behind them. Caleb saw them through the relic wall as clean points of white fire, too organized to be scouts, too close to be an accident. Miranda Vale touched her wrist communicator, but the Dominion fleet was still locked. Her voice stayed controlled, yet Caleb could hear the strain under it. Coalition command vessels. Siege configuration. They came prepared to take the relic. Of course they did, Caleb said. Everybody brought a shopping list for the end of the world. A message burst across the chamber in Aurelian, then translated itself for Caleb. Coalition broadcast. Dominion vessels will power down all remaining systems and surrender access to the artifact. Refusal will be treated as hostile occupation. Miranda looked at him then, not at the weapon, not at her fleet, at him. You can stop them. Caleb felt his stomach drop. He had known this moment was coming, and still it landed harder than he expected. No, Mr. Warren. No, Commander. They will board this structure. They will remove you if they can. Then they will try exactly what we tried, only with less restraint. Caleb let out a slow breath. That is a strong argument for locking the door, not for firing first. Miranda stepped closer, her blue stress lines bright beneath her skin. You think this is a courtroom. It is not. It is a battlefield. Caleb turned toward the pedestal. The 5-fingered mark glowed softly, waiting for him like a question that already knew the answer. His hands were damp. His pulse was too loud in his ears. He wanted his sister on the phone. He wanted his father in the garage telling him to quit overthinking and check the obvious thing first. He wanted anybody else to be standing where he was standing. But power had a nasty habit of finding the person least interested in using it and calling that fairness. I am scared, Caleb said. Miranda blinked, caught off guard by the honesty. Then act. I am. The coalition ships began moving closer. On the relic wall, distance numbers dropped mile by mile. The pedestal opened beneath Caleb's hand before he touched it, light rising around his fingers. He could feel the weapon reading him again, not words, not rank, not courage, but hesitation. The good kind. The kind that made a man stop before turning a problem into a crater. Miranda's voice softened, almost pleading now. If you wait too long, you may lose the choice. Caleb placed his palm on the mark. His voice shook once, then steadied. No first strike. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the relic answered without firing a single shot. Blue light spread through space in a silent ring, passing over Dominion ships, coalition ships, drones, carriers, command vessels, every machine built to threaten someone else. One by one, their engines went cold. Weapon ports sealed. Launch bays locked. Navigation folded into safe mode. Emergency lights stayed on. Life support remained steady. No hulls broke. No crews were harmed. The two most dangerous fleets in the system became quiet metal, floating under the same rule. On every screen, in every language, the relic delivered one sentence. Aggression denied. Caleb pulled his hand back and realized he was shaking. Miranda stared at the powerless coalition crescent, then at her own humbled fleet, and for the first time since Caleb had met her, she looked less like a commander and more like a person who had finally understood the size of the room she had walked into. Humanity could have used this, she said quietly. Caleb looked out at the frozen stars. That is why it waited for someone willing not to. 3 days later, Caleb Warren stood before the emergency assembly of the Galactic Council wearing the same gray utility jacket, because nobody had thought to pack him a formal suit for accidentally becoming the keeper of a relic older than recorded history. He had slept maybe 4 hours total. His eyes were red, his voice was rough, and there was a grease stain on his left sleeve from crawling through a Dominion maintenance hatch after the relic released basic navigation back to both fleets. Behind him, on a wall of floating screens, Every major species in the known sectors watched in absolute silence. The Aurelians were there. The Marrow Coalition was there. So were dozens of smaller worlds that had spent centuries learning to survive between empires with prettier flags and larger guns. A counselor with a crown of glass-like horns leaned toward his microphone. "Mr. Warren, is Earth claiming ownership of the artifact?" Caleb looked down at the table. There was no coffee. That felt unfair. "No," he said. The chamber murmured. Another counselor spoke before the first one could respond. "Then why has the artifact recognized a Terran custodian?" Caleb rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Because every commander who approached it asked how to make it obey. I asked why it was saying no." Commander Miranda Vale stood 2 seats behind him, silent in her formal Dominion uniform. She had not forgiven him for humiliating her fleet. Caleb had not asked her to. But when the Marrow envoy accused humanity of staging the entire crisis, Miranda stepped forward and said, "That is false." The room quieted. Her voice carried no warmth, but it carried truth. The Terran had the opportunity to destroy both fleets. He did not. He had the opportunity to claim command. He did not. He chose restraint when every military doctrine in this chamber would have advised the opposite. Caleb turned slightly, surprised. Miranda did not look at him. Maybe that was her version of an apology. The glass-horned counselor narrowed his eyes. "And if the council refuses Terran supervision?" Caleb hated that question because it was the one everyone had really come to ask. Not who built the weapon. Not why they feared themselves enough to lock it away. Just what happens if we do not get our way. He thought of his sister back in Maine, finally reached by delayed signal, crying and yelling at him in the same breath. He thought of his father's garage, of ordinary tools hanging on pegboard, of the old lesson that a tool only cares what your hands do. Then he looked at the assembly, at all those proud faces waiting for a threat. He gave them something quieter. "Then it stays awake." No one spoke. Caleb let the words settle, not as a promise of punishment, but as a boundary. Earth will not use it to rule you. We will not rent it, sell it, trade access, or turn it into a flag. The relic remains sealed. No fleet comes within 1 million miles of Vera. 9. Without joint civilian oversight. No empire gets special rights. No commander gets a private audience. And if anyone tries to make it fire first, it will do what it did before. It will take the keys away. The silence that followed was not fear exactly. It was recognition. For the first time, the great powers of the galaxy understood that humanity's most dangerous quality was not rage, technology, or courage. It was the hard, painful discipline to stand beside power and say no. Later, when the assembly ended, Caleb sat alone in a service corridor outside the chamber and finally drank a terrible cup of council coffee. Miranda found him there. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Then she asked, "Does restraint always feel this heavy?" Caleb stared into the cup and gave a tired little smile. "Only when it matters." Outside, beyond the polished walls and diplomatic speeches, the ancient relic drifted quietly above Vera. 9, awake but unfired, powerful but unused. And across the galaxy, children on small worlds slept a little easier, not because humanity had shown them a greater weapon, but because one tired human had reminded everyone that the strongest hand in the room is sometimes the one that stays open.